We are back. I apologize for missing a few uploads. I was a bit under the weather, so we're going to recycle this kind of old video that never made it to the channel, so no one's ever seen it before, but we're going to get it out of the way today. I want to say that to preface the fact that the federal funding freeze is out of the way now. It's been blocked as the unconstitutional nonsense that it was, so this isn't to drum up fear about it happening, but I do want to watch a Republican on CNN who was struggling at best to explain why Trump freezing this federal funding to things like school lunch programs, veteran housing assistance, and more is a good thing, to show how truly detached this party is from ever caring about the average everyday American.
Would you support getting rid of, school lunch for vulnerable kids and breakfast and Head Start, for example, and getting rid of childhood cancer research? Do you support that? And what do you say to your constituents? I want to follow up on that question too, because I didn't hear an answer from you.
Sure. So I'm an ER doc, and I know that philanthropy is where you get most of your money for childhood cancer research, for example. And it's not just you look at what the president just proposed, a $500 billion spending bill on AI to produce cancer early detection in the first stage on most body parts. That's his spending bill where he wants to increase cancer research. So it's just about what part of the money it comes out of. When you talk about school lunches, hey, I worked my way through high school. I don't know about you, but I worked since I was, before I was even 13 years old. I was picking berries in the field before we had child labor laws that precluded that. I was a paper boy. And when I was in high school, I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home, instead of going to work at Burger King and McDonald's during the summer, should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? I think we need to have a top-down review.
If you're confused here, he's absolutely claiming that kids should go to work on top of school at Burger King or McDonald's rather than receive free lunch. That way they can pay for their lunch. This is also a program that helps those in elementary school, not to mention, but even the thought of a 16-year-old whose family can't afford lunch should have to go without because what? Because they don't want to work on top of being at school. That's an evil perspective to have. These people will just keep on pushing the pull yourself up by the bootstraps further and further to where now even elementary school kids have to get themselves out in the workforce and earn their keep. These are the people who also want to convince you that they're pro-life, that they're pro-family, that they're pro-everyday American, yet their answer to everything is exactly that. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. People who speak from privilege will always be the most annoying to me because they feel like they need the most to say about something they've never experienced. And as to what he's saying, industry sponsors do make up a decent portion of cancer research, but only because it's subsidized. Otherwise, none of them would touch it because it's not profitable. Funding through public avenues, however, has brought us over 80 cancer research drugs from 2010 to 2019, and a lot of just gains that we wouldn't have seen from the private sector.
Who can actually go and actually produce their own income? Who can actually go out there and do something that makes them have value and work skills for the future? I mean, how many people got their start in fast food restaurants when they were kids versus just giving a blanket rule that gives all kids lunches in high school who are capable of going out and actually getting a job and doing something that makes them have value, thinking about their future instead of thinking about how they're going to sponge out the government when they don't need to. We don't give people value. We don't give them the ability to dig themselves out when we penalize them for actually working and actually keep them on welfare. That's what's been the inner city problem for a very long time. We need to have a top-down review so we can get people out of poverty, because you know what? America's very good at creating jobs and giving people worth, and we've been very traditionally good at that, but we're losing our way. And that's when we give people incentives to stay at home and not work. That doesn't work for America.
But a lot of these kids aren't even of working age. They're young kids, and as you well know,
I feel the need to first bring up survivorship bias because that's what this is, and it's what a lot of crusty old Republicans show when they talk about social safety nets and handouts and whatever they want to call it. It's this idea that because I went through something, because I had to achieve this the hard way, because I survived this, you should have to as well. Because he had to work as a kid, you should have to work as a kid. Your kids should have to work while they're at school or after they leave school as well. Because why? What's practical about that? It's just really selfish, and there's no logical application as to why we would want this to be the standard for children. I mean, we should want better for our future generations, and forcing more and more of our population into working these meaningless, mundane jobs just to survive hinders true growth and true innovation. Think of how many engineers are at McDonald's or Walmart because they couldn't afford college or because they can't balance they're having to work 60 hours a week to afford their cost of living with having to do school on top of it. Imagine how many teachers are doing home health or whatever the possibility is. Like, Republicans don't care about this, and they don't care about maximizing the opportunity for growth for the middle or lower class either, because they don't benefit from you leaving the middle class. That's the dirty little secret they won't tell you. They want to maximize the wealth at the top. So they want you to be forced into these mundane jobs where they can underpay you and compared to the profit you provide their company. And on the basis of, well, lack of degree, lack of this, lack of whatever, that is also constantly being made more expensive and harder to achieve. This way that you're stuck in the cycle and less people are able to break out of this. That way the owners always have their feet on the neck of the working class. They always have some control over them. And then to even further make this seem, I don't know, bleak in terms of overcoming this, you intertwine things like healthcare with work requirements and other things. So you don't even want to stand up to your employers because they have control over different vast swaths of your life. And it's also creating a social stigma to kind of cover it up about being your own laziness, or you have a choice, when the choice is you work one of these jobs where you're stuck making someone else wealthy while barely surviving, or you go to this other job where the conditions are exactly the same, or you die from starvation and homelessness or disease or whatever the long list may be. And then maybe one out of every 1,000 people break out of this, and then they're like, I did it, so let me pull the ladder up from under me. I mean, it's people making slightly above minimum wage, barely a living wage, or living wage, right? Like, all while people you work for, the people that they are employed by, are seeing record profits, but the pay is stagnating. And Republicans want you to think that this is the American dream, that you guys are just temporarily embarrassed billionaires and eventually you'll be the one benefiting from the system. So don't complain about it too much. It's sickening. I mean, because every one in, like I said, 1,000 be able to cheat the system, we should write off the other 999. Again, though, most of these who cheat the system conveniently leave out the massive handouts they receive along the way, like J.D. Vance with his everyman blue-collar story, rising from poor beginnings, and leaves out the fact of all the help and money he received from billionaire Peter Thiel. But I understand why you would rather portray that as, well, he pulled himself up by the bootstraps. And again, just to instantly turn around and want to pull those ladders up from those underneath them.